So, throughout the battle between Drake and Kendrick Lamar, one of the main points of attack that Drake had against Kendrick was that this image of Kendrick being a hometown hero and giving back to his community was all a facade. Drake said Kendrick's the black messiah wifing a mixed queen and that he doesn't go back to his hood to plant money trees. Now, I'm not really sure why he questioned Kendrick's fiance's ethnicity when he has a baby with a white French ex-adult film star, but we're going to focus mainly on the not going back to your hood and planting money trees bar. Because for the months after this beef ended, this was a narrative that people genuinely ran with. And that's because the biggest song that came from this beef, Not Like Us, saw Kendrick crafting arguably what is his most quote-unquote West Coast sounding record of all time. It had that signature DJ Mustard production. I mean, Mustard even spoke on making the beat, say that he was trying to combine the worlds of Lil Jon's crunk era and Dr. Dre's classic West Coast sound. Record also saw Kendrick rapping ahead of the beat, which is a similar flow inspired by LA native rapper Draco the Ruler. The success of the record saw Kendrick returning to his hometown to do a concert and a music video, which both saw the support of dozens of LA artists. And this led the discussion to turn to, if so many of Kendrick's fellow LA native artists were championing him and supporting him throughout the success of arguably his most West Coast sounding record ever, why has he not shown out for them the same way they showed out for him? Why is this the first time in DJ Mustard's long tenure of producing West Coast slappers that Kendrick Lamar finally hops on one of his beats? Why is he not giving him features? Why is he not reposting Mustard or YG or any West Coast artist's album onto his social media pages when he has arguably the largest platform out of any other West Coast artist? Maybe that's what Drake meant by this whole messiah thing or the savior of hip-hop thing being a facade. Kendrick paints himself as a hometown hero, but is he really going back and planting those money trees, using his wealth, his platform, and resources to grow and uplift his community? Why is he not returning the favor to all these West Coast artists who showed him support, and when it's time for them to release music of their own, Kendrick is nowhere to be found? Well, there's several reasons for this, which we'll touch on in this video, and it's also important to note that 2 years back, Kendrick did tell us that he is not the savior. Going to play an important role in this video later on, but in the meantime, let's look at the person who started this narrative in the first place. Drake was basically painting Kendrick as this facade who profits off making music about the hardships within his community, but when it comes time to actually use his platform, add his profits to make a change in his community, well, as Drake put it, he's not planting any money trees. So let's briefly look at the money trees that Drake has planted. Now, to his credit, he has been responsible for sharing his platform with artists who are much smaller than him and sometimes relatively unknown at the time that he collaborates with them. But now this is a double-edged sword, right? By incorporating different soundscapes into his music and being somewhat early on the trend, Drake effectively becomes a one-stop shop for any type of music you want to hear. You want to hear Latin-inspired music? He has collaborations with Bad Bunny. Collaborating with Wizkid early on has allowed Drake to make America acquainted with that dancehall sound, and effectively he's been able to use it for the last 5 to 10 years. And most notably, by doing records with 21 Savage, Migos, Future, Lil Baby, Young Thug, early on, he's been able to borrow a sound, style, stories, flows, production, and lifestyle from a culture he did not grow up in. That's why Kendrick said, he's not a colleague of Atlanta trap music, he's a colonizer. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, all of these smaller artists are then introduced to a much larger audience when Drake gets on their record. So it's a double-edged sword. These collaborations are mutually beneficial, and they seem more transactional than anything, almost like a favor for a favor. Kendrick, on the other end, rarely pops in to give features. He could have the least amount of features of any megastar hip-hop artist in history. So as a result, when you look at who has done more to platform lesser-known artists, you got to give that to Drake. But you also got to ask, at its core, with its intentions, is it a creative thing or is it a capitalistic thing? Well, we'll touch on that shortly, but a big reason why this conversation has come up again is because over the last few months, DJ Mustard and YG have both released albums, and we didn't see any support on those projects from Kendrick. Obviously, there was no features from him, and he didn't even post a link to the album so fans could buy it on his social media platforms. Neither of these albums sold more than 20K in the first week, and it was once these sales figures came out that people were questioning, if DJ Mustard just gave Kendrick one of the biggest hits of his career, why can't Kendrick show a little bit of support when it's DJ Mustard's turn to put out some music of his own? Why is he always quiet when giving placements to these guys or giving them features would obviously help boost their popularity and the popularity of West Coast rap in general? And I think the answer lies in the question I asked before, in terms of what are the intentions behind the way these different artists move? Does it stem from a place of creativity or a place of capitalism? And I think just by analyzing Kendrick's Twitter, we can kind of see the type of person he is and the moves that he makes. And that's because Kendrick doesn't tweet anything. I mean, unless you scroll back to like 2010, Kendrick doesn't tweet his thoughts. He doesn't tweet his emotions. He doesn't tweet what music he's listening to. He doesn't get to Twitter beefing. He doesn't like or repost anything except for a couple of the projects he's working on or Baby Keem's album. I mean, I had to scroll back all the way to 2018 to find him sharing other people's music on Twitter, to which he actually did. He shared music from both Ty Dolla $ign and J305, both artists from California, and he obviously also shared new music from his TV label mates at the time, who were all also from California. Ironically, while scrolling through his Twitter, I noticed back in 2018, he also, funny enough, shared a link to Jay Prince's book. If you guys don't know who that is, it's the father of the guy who found Drake. I doubt Kendrick would be sharing his book today, but my point is, you have to go back all the way to 2018 to even see glimpses of any real activity from Kendrick Lamar on Twitter, let alone him reposting anyone else's music. Once 2020 hit, it was silence from Kendrick Lamar, both on Twitter and on actual music releases. He didn't release anything until 2022 and gave us a glimpse into where he's been at. Therapy, dealing with his past traumas, reflecting on and healing from mistakes he made in the past, and realizing that as much as he wants to make a change, whether it's through his music or his actions, he is not that savior. He is not that messiah, as Drake would put it. He set the standard. He told us that we should not expect perfection from him all the time. For the most part, Kendrick moves off creativity, not capitalism. If he moved off capitalistic intentions, he wouldn't have taken 5 years off. He'd be reposting every DJ Mustard album. He'd do features with everyone off the West Coast. He'd be dropping albums every single quarter the same way Drake does. But that's the difference. Kendrick moves in a way that feels authentic to him. I don't think his silence is a reflection of a lack of uplifting that he's done for his community. In fact, he's arguably done a lot more for his community than Drake has done for his. We're going to touch on that very shortly in this video, but going back to the concept of intentions, right? Because this narrative stemmed from Drake basically saying Kendrick's intentions were to profit off the struggle and hardships that his community grew up in. There wasn't genuine intent behind these bars of trying to uplift his community because he doesn't actually go back and invest in the future of his neighborhood. And I don't really want to make this too much of a Drake-centered video, but I think this all stems back to intentions, and I think it's important to understand the true intention behind these people as they make the art they make and uplift the smaller artists or the communities that they uplift. As we said, Drake has throughout his entire career engaged in this favor for a favor type of thing where he helps out lesser known artists by either giving them features or having them feature on his records. Now, while it's again obviously very beneficial for the smaller artists, prime examples of that would be we would not know who McConan was or Blockboy JB if Drake hadn't done a song with them early on in their careers. But by that same token, if his intentions were to truly uplift these artists and get them on a higher platform rather than just mainly benefiting himself, then he wouldn't go about these collaborations in the way that he does. What I mean by that is, look at the Migos, right? Drake hopped on Versace when the Migos were, at the very best, just regionally known artists within Atlanta. That song that Drake hopped on gave him the opportunity to be able to attract a much wider audience. However, for about 4 years after that record, it was very hard for the Migos truly break into the mainstream on a global level on their own. And it wasn't thanks to Drake that they did. It was thanks to the countless mixtapes they put out, mixtapes, hooks, features, hits, etc. And you could argue that having that Drake feature so early on in their career almost gave them an unorganic head start and set the standard so high for what their next release needed to hit, this type of success that it needed to attain, that it was virtually impossible to recreate that same success or magic that early on in their career, which set them back because if every song wasn't the next Versace, the labels would slowly start to invest less and less in them. And at the same time, throughout those pivotal 4 years within the Migos' career, when Offset was in and out of prison, and they were struggling to attain that same level of success that they had with Drake on Versace, Drake was nowhere to be found. He only returned back and started collaborating again with the Migos once they dropped their massive major label debut album, Culture. Then we saw Drake on Walk It Like I Talk It. The Migos opened up for him on tour. He was on Quavo's album. Quavo was on his album. He did a song with Offset. He was collaborating with the Migos every chance that he could because they were hot. Fast forward to 2020, their buzz kind of cooled down. Culture 3 wasn't the same success that the previous 2 installments in the Culture series were. And after Culture 3, when their buzz died down, we never saw Drake with them again. Same story can be told with a Blockboy JB, with a McConaughey, who Drake actually signed but failed to appear next to after getting on the remix of his song Tuesday. Then there's him getting on the remix to Fetty Wap's song My Way. He did that because Fetty Wap was scorching hot, no Diddy, and as Fetty Wap recalls it, Drake called him to get on that remix, but originally the song was Fetty Wap's friend Monty's song. So Fetty asked Drake to take off Fetty's verse and keep Monty on it since it was originally his song. Drake refused to do that. The song then suddenly leaked, and it was put onto Drake's SoundCloud without Fetty Wap even knowing. So what I'm trying to say is, again, to Drake's credit, he does a great job at keeping his ear on new talent, discovering them somewhat early, and giving them a taste of success that they had never seen before by collaborating with them. But the intention behind it constantly seems to be for his own benefit. It doesn't seem to stem from a creative perspective. It seems to stem from, these guys are buzzing, their sound could work well with what I've got going on, then I could constantly incorporate their sound into my future music once my audience has been adapted to hearing me collaborate with them. And there's an obvious disregard for these artists once Drake has got what he wanted, which is the collaboration, the look, the ability to incorporate their sound into his music. Obviously, again, a big criticism against Kendrick was that he doesn't do enough for LA artists. He doesn't put them on, he doesn't share their music, he doesn't give features to them. And we've obviously seen Drake collaborate with and sign Toronto artists. But just because he's done that, I don't think I need to make the argument for why he's done it or how he's done it in a vulturistic way, if that's a word. Capitalistic approach to benefiting off someone else's creativity. The Weeknd has come out in multiple interviews stating that Drake did his best to try to sign him. He took a lot of the Weeknd's records and put them on his own album. When the Weeknd went in another direction and didn't sign with Drake, Drake obviously wasn't happy about this. With Party Next Door, he's still signed to OVO. He's written some of Drake's biggest hits. And yeah, Drake gave him a voice early on. Drake gave him features, but it's always seemed like Party Next Door has lived in the shadows of Drake. Whether or not that's his choice, we'll never know. But this does seem to be a very repeated theme within Drake's career in that he'll help the little guys, but it'll only be to make his spotlight bigger. I mean, the most I would say Drake did for Toronto in a genuine attempt at showcasing lesser known talent was his 2022 OVO Fest, where he had an entire day just dedicated to performances from local Toronto acts. However, this wasn't Drake putting on new Toronto talent. This was Drake showcasing legends within Toronto. It's also called the OVO Fest. Again, Drake is centered stage. The intention behind this is to make Drake's stage bigger. No matter how many different artists he brings on that stage, he is always at the center of it, which is fine, but intention is important in understanding sacrifices that these massive megastars like Drake and Kendrick genuinely do for the betterment of these smaller artists or their community in general. While Kendrick is much more silent than Drake, that doesn't correlate to him being less supportive of his hometown than Drake is to his. Look at the Pop-Out, that's a perfect example. That show wasn't about Kendrick. If it was, it wouldn't have been called Ken and Friends Present the Pop-Out. It would have been called Kendrick Lamar, The Pop-Out. The show would have been about promoting any new music that Kendrick has coming out. Instead, it was about uniting the city. He brought all these different gang members, these different pillars within Compton to share the stage with him. He gave a set to both DJ Head and DJ Mustard, who brought out various different artists from LA. The way I perceived it, this show wasn't a showcase of how far Kendrick has come or a celebration of his legacy. It was meant more so to use Kendrick's platform and the recent success that he had to shine a spotlight on and unite the town that he's from. I mean, if that show was really just all about Kendrick, there would have been no DJ Head, there would have been no DJ Mustard, there wouldn't have been all these different LA artists on stage, and Baby Keem would have been there. And speaking of Baby Keem and speaking about Kendrick's intention behind the support that he shows to different artists, we didn't even know Baby Keem was Kendrick's cousin for the longest time. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Kendrick was developing Keem as an artist, making sure that when he did come out, when they did kind of do that announcement that they were cousins and collaborate together, Keem would have already cultivated a fan base of his own, and people would recognize Keem for Keem. not necessarily because he had that one song with Kendrick Lamar or that he's Kendrick Lamar's cousin. Unlike a McConan or a Party Next Door, where the first thing you think of when you think of these artists is, oh, they were Drake's artists. But anyways, let's take it off of Drake and again go back to Kendrick Lamar's intentions and the support that he genuinely does show to his community, the money trees that he plants. After Kendrick's pop-out concert, he donated $200,000 to 20 different Los Angeles charities and community initiatives. The goal of that donation was to support initiatives focused on youth empowerment, education, and community development. But these charitable initiatives didn't just start after this beef when Drake called Kendrick out for not planting enough money trees. 9 years ago in 2015, Kendrick Lamar was honored by the California Senate floor with the 35th Generational Icon Award for donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to after-school programs, sports programs, and music programs in Compton to help keep the youth off the street. The Senator Hall spoke on Kendrick's contributions to his hometown by saying, "If you visit Compton, Mr. Lamar is a familiar face in the neighborhood." The rapper has donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Compton Unified School District's music, sports, and after-school programs to help keep Compton students off the streets and in the classroom. Around the same time, Kendrick also gave $50,000 to his high school's music program. And this is just what's public, right? Kendrick's childhood friend, Hida J3, has stated on record that Kendrick Lamar has paid for people's funerals, given out features for free, paid for people's college education. And while he doesn't tweet about this, while he doesn't get up and announce this, while he stays relatively silent, the intentions are pure and these money trees are being planted behind the scenes. Kendrick's just not going to be the one speaking on them. Other people will. There was even an artist by the name of Supreme Abdul-Jabbar who tweeted out once, "I had a basketball team at Campanella Park in Compton. Kendrick was shooting footage for his tour, saw us practicing, and got everyone's shoe size and went to Foot Locker and copped the whole team's shoes." Without Kendrick speaking on these things, the public fails to realize that he's probably done countless charitable gestures and changed the lives of many people within his neighborhood, but chooses to do it in silence, because the intention is not to have him be center stage. But if you do want to talk about him being center stage and using his stage and his platform to collaborate with and uplift other artists within his community, Kendrick Lamar has done features with Nipsey Hussle, SOB RBE, Flying Lotus, Vince Staples, Anderson .Paak, Blast, YG, Thundercat, Steve Lacey, The Game, and more. All West Coast artists. So in the limited number of features that Kendrick does, he's still managed to have collaborated with way more artists from his hometown than Drake ever has with artists from Toronto. So it's obvious that Kendrick actually does attempt to help his community and support the artists and the establishments within Compton. But if you want to talk about Kendrick Lamar rapping more about being a pillar in the community rather than actually going back and planting money trees, we got to understand the intentions, the root of why Kendrick does this. Kendrick discusses these stories, makes albums like Good Kid, Mad City and To Pimp a Butterfly to give a voice and context to the people still stuck in his childhood neighborhood who are trapped in the cycle of crime, violence, and poverty. He lays out the problems most Compton natives face within his music, and he does his best to attempt to provide solutions. His music invites millions of listeners to see their side of the world, see the inside of Compton from the narration of one of the neighborhood's natives, and allows them to gain insight and perspective they would never have if Kendrick hadn't told these stories in his records. By making albums like Good Kid, Mad City, he's simultaneously planting those money trees through his music, as he's giving the people of Compton a voice and shining light on their story, and giving them inspiration to realize that they don't have to resort to a life of violence. They could pursue their passion and creativity the same way Kendrick did. And outside of the money trees within the music, on the business side of things, creating PG Lang was another major move in empowering not only himself, but also his neighborhood and other aspiring artists. See, PG Lang is not just a record company. Dave Free, the co-founder of PG Lang along with Kendrick Lamar, referred to the company as a service company, establishing foundations in not only music, but also film, television, art, books, and podcasts. He said, "Our community speaks music, film, television, arts, books, and podcasts because sometimes we have to use different languages to get the point of our stories across. Stories that speak to many nations, many races, and many ages. That is why our writers, singers, directors, musicians, and producers break formats when we build ideas and make them real for the curious. It's not a record label, a movie studio, or a publishing house. This is something new. In this overstimulated time, we're focused on cultivating raw expression from grassroots partnerships. We tell stories, we communicate between artists and establishments, we communicate that taste is interchangeable within fields. Because of the company's ambiguity, it gives him and Kendrick Lamar more room to grow and experiment. Creative companies haven't really worked like this before because they usually have a specific story and aesthetic, but PG Lang is taking a much different approach. Outside of releasing albums, PG Lang has launched several initiatives, including an advertising campaign for Calvin Klein with a series of 7 short films that were written and directed by Dave Free. PG Lang also launched the Move Africa, a Global Citizen Experience, which is a long-term initiative to create an international music touring circuit in Africa. Over 5 years, the initiative will expand to 5 African countries by 2025, providing local communities with job opportunities, skill development, and exposure to global audiences. Move Africa aimed to address key issues like health funding, climate change, and economic opportunities through citizen-led advocacy. The initiative also aims to boost Africa's entertainment industry by attracting international and regional artists while benefiting local economies. PG Lang also partnered with the finance company Cash App. Kendrick Lamar shot a commercial called Balcony, where he put a South Central California comedian, Xavier, in the commercial. Their collaboration with Cash App was all about pushing financial literacy, and the Cash App commercial they directed was played before the intro of every stop on Kendrick Lamar's 2022 Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers tour, with pop-up community fundraising made super easy through the Cash App app. You were able to donate to various organizations through the Cash App app, and thanks to PG Lang's collaboration with Cash App was matching every single donation specifically to the nonprofit organization called the Compton Girls Club. As far as music goes, in March of 2022, Kendrick Lamar and PG Lang had also signed an LA artist by the name of Tana Leone, who worked with Kendrick on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers on the song Mr. Morale. He starred in PG Lang's advertising campaigns for the lifestyle brand Converse, and he opened up for Kendrick on his Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers tour. He also dropped his own project on the label called Sleepy Soldier. So needless to say, there's a laundry list of people and communities and organizations that Kendrick Lamar and PG Lang have helped out throughout the years, whether it was documented or done in silence. The message in the music has always translated to the intention behind every action Kendrick takes behind the scenes. We just don't see it because he doesn't talk about it. We don't know what Kendrick has done for DJ Mustard or YG just because he didn't tweet their album, because he likely has a real relationship with them behind the scenes. We don't know the money trees that Kendrick has planted because he doesn't talk about them. It takes the California Senate floor to tell everyone how much money Kendrick Lamar has donated because Kendrick doesn't tell us himself. What Kendrick does tell us is that he's not the savior. He's not a perfect human being. That's why he likely takes years off at a time from releasing music and doing collaborations to do a lot of self-reflecting, take a step back, work on himself before he could come and help out other people. That doesn't mean his influence and assistance isn't felt throughout his community. And all that to say, I do think Kendrick Lamar is about to give us the most West Coast sounding album that he has ever made in his life. I mean, you could even tell by the song he previewed on the Not Like Us music video. It also has that same bouncy West Coast bass line within the production. He was back in the studio months ago with Thundercat, another LA artist. And the pop-up show saw him linking up again with his fellow TDE label mates, as well as a bunch of other LA artists. I'm sure this has been inspiration for Kendrick to not only try to uplift and unite his community, but also regain this newfound inspiration to incorporate a lot of these West Coast sounds that he hasn't necessarily sprinkled into his music in the past. I guess we'll have to wait and see, but really the main point of this video is to understand the intention behind the art, the intention behind the actions. You can't say Kendrick doesn't support West Coast artists because he doesn't move the same way Drake moves, by sharing everything on Twitter, reposting people's stuff on Instagram, hopping on features every chance that he could, dropping music consistently. That's not the type of person Kendrick Lamar is. But his intention is to uplift through positive messaging and charitable initiatives. And while he doesn't speak on them, while he doesn't tweet on them, they're definitely there, they definitely exist, and they're definitely felt. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Does Kendrick do enough to support West Coast artists? Like this video if you're still bumping Not Like Us. Like this video if you're not still bumping Not Like Us. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.
There's a lot of little nuggets in both of their disses that if it wasn't for these breakdowns, and salute to, guys like this, Rapaholics, because I think they directly get it.